Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine Galloway, certified high performance coach with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. This month, we're talking about being a resilient overcomer, and that can be everything from the hero's journey to just getting through the day with your kids. We're going to cover it all here. I have Alyssa Brade, who is a maternal wellness advocate and author, who's going to dive deep into the subject for us mothers. Alyssa, thank you for being here. Please tell us more about you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany. I'm really excited to share with your listeners. So, as Tiffany said, am a maternal wellness advocate. I'm also an author. I wrote a book called Mommy Needs a Minute From Burnout to Empowerment. And it's all about how our busy culture and society makes it really hard for us to take a minute and how important it is, not only for ourselves, but for our children. I live here in Washington State in the Pacific Northwest with my husband, and I have two toddlers, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old.
I love the toddler age. There's so much curiosity in that age. It's so much fun. How would you
It
define
is
resilience as a mother with toddlers?
I would say resilience is the ability to keep going even when it's really challenging and hard, and knowing that you have everything you need within yourself to be successful throughout your day at the tasks that you're doing. And whether you know what you're doing right now or not, you still have the tools and the resources within your own mental strength and your own power to find what you need to be okay.
I like that you said what you need. I think that's a really important question to ask yourself. What do I need right now? And realize that you can give yourself that gift of giving yourself what you need because you know you have the answers inside you. How do you instill that as an example as a mother and in your kids?
I feel like a big thing is a growth mindset. We really talk a lot about failure in our house and how it's something to be celebrated because it means that we were courageous and bold and we put ourselves out there. We also talk a lot about self advocacy in our house and the importance of regulating yourself and recognizing when you need a minute, even if nobody else thinks you should need a minute or thinks you need to take a minute, the importance of recognizing what you're feeling inside of you and being able to advocate for what you need to other people.
How does that build someone to be an overcomer over time?
I feel like it helps because that growth mentality really instills in you a sense of no matter what obstacle you face, no matter what failure you experience, you view it as a learning opportunity instead of a definition of your worth or your value. Um,
How did you get comfortable with the idea that you can let your kids fail and that it's a good thing?
I think actually, in order to get comfortable with your kids doing it, you have to get comfortable with yourself doing it, because you're setting the example. And I think the biggest thing for me, as far as that goes, was recognizing that my worth and my value is intrinsic and it's not defined by a list of accomplishments or a list of failures. Um, and you can tell your kids as much as you'd like, oh, failure's a part of life. It's okay to fail. I support you either way. But they're going to look at your actions, your lifestyle, how you treat yourself when you fail. So until you have that strong foundation within yourself that it's all right that I fail and I model that for my children, the chances are they will adopt a mentality towards it like the one you've modeled for them their entire lives.
So were you always that way, or did you have a turning point where you're like, I have to accept failure. I have to face it differently.
I have always been a perfectionist my entire life, and I grew up with the mentality if you don't do it right, don't bother doing it at all.
Mm.
And that was a really big part of my worth and my value. If it wasn't a 4.0, then the grade wasn't good enough. And if I wasn't an all star soccer player, then don't bother showing up for the game. And that's kind of how I treated myself, and my value was rooted in that. And it wasn't until I became a mother, which I think is true for a lot of women, when you're modeling behavior and how to interact with the world with somebody and you want the absolute best for them, it really puts a spotlight on all of the ways you're not being very kind to yourself and the ways you're
Mm.
not being kind and showing up well for others. Um, and those habits that we have that you're like, oh my goodness, do what I say and not what I do, because I'm really not modeling what I want you to be like.
But they're watching and they're listening even when we don't realize it, and that can backfire sometimes. And but those are the moments that really make you go, okay, who do I really want to be, and how do I want to show up differently now that I'm aware of this area that I need to change, or this pattern that needs to stop, or this chain in my family pattern that needs to break. And that's
Mhm.
been humbling. And I think that's part of being a mom is you're really humbled. You could be so accomplished and your kids could just be like, yeah, well, you're still just my mom.
Yeah.
So,
It's very, very true, and I think that being able to truly model that for your children, and I noticed with my three-year-old, he we were working on his letters and just very, very basic, the phonics, and he was getting frustrated because he wasn't getting it right away, and I was like, "I'm not being demanding, I'm not, like, pushing him." I was like, "It's okay, buddy, we all fail, it's okay," and he started saying to me things that I've said was saying about myself when he was
mhm,
little. Those things, he was like, "I'm not doing it right. I don't wanna do it at all." And I was like, "Oh, those." So even though I'm telling him, "It's okay, it's okay,
mhm,
it's
mhm.
okay," he is internalizing what I'm saying about myself and the situations that he sees me experiencing failure.
Exactly. And that is really the catalyst for wanting them to understand what resilience and being an overcomer is, because we're human. We all
Yeah.
have things that we're going to need to work on. We have weaknesses, but we can make them strengths. We can overcome whatever it is that's getting in the way of who we want to be or who we want to become. And that includes the kind of mother that you want to be. We've had several guests come on who have talked about how they had this moment, this epiphany of needing to change and wanting to be better than their mother, or just a pattern that they needed to break, they didn't want to pass on. And I think that's the key, or I'm trying to find the right word. Um, that's where motherhood changes us so much, because it's so much more than us. It becomes about the next generation and the next and the next, at least for those that care and have the perspective of the responsibility of this human being that I am forming and that I am developing or sustaining. I don't know if developing is even the right word. I think so distracted by my daughter being on the violin. Um, let's do this again. Okay. This is like the most distracted episode ever. We usually go right through. It's so
It's
fun.
okay.
Uh, um, what is something in your life that really challenged you and really showed you what you were made of, but now is something you look back and say, hey, I overcame that. I did that. And now I'm stronger for it.
I love that question. I think all of us have an overcomer story, a challenge that we experienced. For me, I was told that I would never be able to have children, or if I did want to have children, it would be very difficult. And so I was planning on never having kids. I was in the middle of a master's degree, very career driven. A few weeks before COVID, I found out that I was pregnant very
Oh, wow.
unexpectedly. And then COVID exploded. I was in the middle of my master's degree, and my master's degree, I was on a scholarship, and they were like, "You can't take time off. The program is very structured." They were like, "Either you drop out of the program and you lose your scholarship, or you do it with the baby." And so I did it with the baby. Didn't take any time off. I was teaching for the university and also in my doing my degree. And then my husband was like, "I'm going to get a vasectomy because we were on the track for no kids. And this was a big surprise." And he gets a vasectomy. And a couple months later, we found out that I'm pregnant again with back in. And I think the universe was probably laughing at us just a little bit. um, and during that time, it was this big shift of identity and transition because what I had thought my life was going to look like and what I'd been working
Mhm.
towards for so many years was being pulled out from under me. And I felt like I had no say or control over that. And then in addition, I was now trying to make decisions, not just what was best for me, but what was best for this little baby, and then what was best for this new baby in my tummy. I was still trying to have it all. That illusion that society tells us so often that you can have it all, you're empowered, you can do it all, and you can do it all with your coffee in your hand and your perfectly manicured outfit. Like, you got this. And so I was working full time. I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, so I was working from home. I had my then 8-month-old, and I was 2 months pregnant, and I was so, so sick from just exhaustion and burnout and sleep deprivation, and I was carrying my little guy down our cement stairs, and I fainted. Um, and he ended up dropping him and landing on my belly, fainting and just face planting on the cement while I was carrying my little guy. And he ended up cracked his skull. He had internal hemorrhaging, and we took him to the emergency room, and they ended up having him helicoptered to a larger hospital where he was going to need brain surgery. And they told us that chances were really high that he wasn't going to live. And that was obviously extremely traumatizing. We were worried that about the baby in my tummy because I'd landed on that baby, and then also my little guy. Miraculously, when we got there with the helicopter, the head surgeon took another MRI and determined that the bleeding in his brain had stopped. They kept him for a few days for observation, but his body miraculously healed itself. We took him to several specialists afterwards, and he's perfectly healthy, normal 3-year-old boy, hitting all of his milestones, tons of energy, and just the sweetest little heart. Um, and I obviously now have my second son, who is 2 years old. And I think that was a moment that really tested what I was made of, the mom guilt and the overwhelm and the fear and the realization that we have such little control over the things that we love most. And it really helped shift my priorities to what it is that we value most in this life, and what are we willing to sacrifice because we think that this is the thing that'll bring us value, the career, the promotion, the title, more money, a better school district, nicer clothes, all the things that we think we equate with value. And I find that many people, even though they say, oh, well, my kids are my biggest priority, or my spouse is my biggest priority, or my health is my biggest priority, really, if we look at where all of our time goes, you see a lot of times that what we say is our value doesn't actually align with what our values truly are. And that was such a big, I think the biggest wake up call for me was, I'm saying that I value this, but I'm actually living my life like I value these definitions of worth and my own looking good for the rest of the world more than I value my own health and my own family.
Well, and isn't that so true of today with social media and everything? It's real easy just to give the highlight reel and look like you've got it all together. But I think we're starting to realize as a collective humanity that, what are we really about? Are we really about becoming famous, of having all the followers, all the likes, or are we about being authentic? Are we about being real? And it's important for our kids to know what that is in a world today that throws so much at them. I think today it's so important to know what our priorities are with our family. We have options now to really be with them all the time and to be with them more with the way the world's going and the options that are available to us. And the traditional ways and the traditional paths are becoming less and less. There's more variance, which is nice because it allows us to all see that we're able to create our own path, and that our kids can do the same thing with things changing so fast as well. And it can be a little intimidating, I think, because it's a world we've never known before. But that's nothing different than a generation before who didn't have the technology that we had, and no different than a generation who faced different difficulties than a pandemic, that they faced a world war. Like, we as a collective of humanity, we've overcome a lot of things. But when it comes down to it, we all in our hearts want the same things. We want to be loved. We want to be able to give love, to feel needed. We want our children to thrive. We want them to feel loved. We want them to reach their full potential. And we want to give them their best opportunity. And what that looks like today is more of an internal strength than it's ever been before, of having mental wellness, of having your health, of having your voice and your intuition, like being able to discern in a world with so many voices, so many messages, so many ideas, and really knowing this is for me, I think is kind of the key to overcoming anything, because you'll know if it's in alignment for you, if it's not. Then if you don't know, you're going to have to probably overcome it to figure that out and figure out who you are on the other side of it. And you're better for it, is I think the thing we forget sometimes, that it's better to just go right into the storm, right into facing it instead of trying to avoid it because it eventually catches up to us.
I think you're 100% right, and I think that's what builds the storms are what build a depth of character and, like you said, a resilience and a spirit that, has served humanity well for thousands and thousands of years, um, and I think that sometimes we, in our very cushy first world lives forget just how resilient humanity is and the difficult things that we've been through and what we are capable of overcoming. Um,
Yeah.
and I think there's many things that if you said to somebody, would you wish to go through this? No, of course not. Well,
Mm.
all of our brains are hardwired to crave comfort and stability and safety. It's how it's how we're designed.
Yeah.
But I do think there's such power and strength, and it is empowering to go through something that is very challenging and realize and recognize that you had what you needed within yourself to overcome it.
Yeah. I love the visuals. We talk about this of a tree in a storm because a tree has to get deeper and deeper and deeper roots to be able to not break and to be able to sway and to be able to be flexible and be able to go. So whenever I think of a storm, I try to think about, okay, my roots must need to be deeper right now. There must be something more depth in my character that I need to experience at this time. And something else you touched on, I think is really important. And I don't know if we've discussed it on the podcast before. It's just this idea that like we live some of us live pretty privileged lives. Like there aren't the necessities of survival that we are overcoming to have water, to have food, to have shelter. And in that, I feel like there's a responsibility that we have then if we're not just trying to survive, unless you are overcoming survival mode to get your basic needs met. I mean, that happens. We have life circumstances that really can test us, but we're not facing the same things as someone around the world who doesn't have those things. And isn't it our obligation, I think, to, if we have so much, not to give and to be less worried about getting and get more worried about why have I been given so much? It must be so that I can bless others. It must be so I can teach my children to bless others. That the things that we're given aren't really ours in my mind as a Christian. Like everything I have is God's. God gave me my children. God gave me this home that I'm in right now. He gave me my body. He gave me the clothes on my back. And I'm forever grateful. And the more grateful I am, the more power there is in my life to have that positive attitude. But there's also this freedom in the idea that I don't have to be attached to anything here of material value or of the values that you were kind of talking about or what we think is valuable. Because the most valuable thing are the things that are priceless. Having your child be that miracle and overcoming that fall, I have a child right now with breath problems and that he's overcoming those things and that he's going to be okay. And mental health issues, like there's all these fights and these battles that we're going through today that are really testing the level of what is your priority? Who are you really at your core? And when you get in touch with that, you can really overcome anything because you realize a lot of things are temporary. A lot of situations are temporary. A lot of these things we get attached to are temporary. They're not things they get to take with us into the next life. And if they don't go with us into the next life, what value do they really have?
It's true, and I think you say that so beautifully. It really brings to mind, like, the challenges that we're undergoing are such a matter of perspective,
Mhm.
and, um, what I might view as this insurmountable challenge, another person might look at me and be like, "I would give anything. I would trade anything to have your challenge
Right.
because what I'm going through right now feels, like I just I can't overcome it." And I think that's something like on a very small scale, when I was found out I was pregnant with my second, I had several friends say to me, like, I could never do that. I don't know how you're going to do that. How are you going to manage to have two kids under two, like two babies? How are you going to do? And I'm like, well, women for thousands and thousands of years have done this before me and have been
Yep.
just fine. And it's incredible what you're capable of doing when you change your perspective and
Mhm.
you're like, I am capable of this. This will not defeat me.
Yeah.
This is not the end of my story. And you do come out on the other side, and sometimes you look back and the days are blurry and they were long,
Yeah.
but you do realize you were more than capable. And so I do think it's such a matter of perspective, and the things we worry about, so much of it is perspective. And in the great scheme of life, sometimes I wonder if all of our worries deserve all of the time and attention and anxiety that we give life into them.
Well, it's a choice. We're choosing to either give in to them or recognize they don't serve us. And I think
Mhm.
that's a resilient piece too, is recognizing, preparing yourself for challenges, but recognizing what is for you, what is not for you. And then just the idea of adding value that's unique to you, that comes from you and nobody else, matters and is enough and makes a difference. That those are those things that I think translate into something more than words can say. And I love that you tied it back to humanity. A lot of what we've talked back to, that strength, you've circled back and go, there's somebody else who's been through this. There's somebody else that's
Mm.
gone through this, that overcome it, is going through this. Somewhere in the world, there is somebody having this human experience that I'm having. Because when we think we're not, or like we've really messed up, or that it's not something that anyone else has experienced before, we feel really isolated and alone. And that's where we can get trapped and thinking, we can't overcome it. Well, yeah, maybe you can't overcome it on your own. Maybe you need to read a book about somebody overcoming it. Maybe you need a coach. Maybe you need to reach out to a friend. Maybe you need a support group. Maybe we weren't meant to do this life alone in a room with a screen. Our brains weren't designed for this. And some of us can cope, and you and I can recognize we're real people here, but it's a real deficit to not be in rooms together with each other. We were designed to read each other's body language, to feel each other's energy. And I think that's why we're circling back and seeking to be in rooms with each other and to do more and to use this tool where it has a place to do good. But this isn't really how we were designed to be. We need hugs, we need touches, handshakes. We need more than what we've gotten used to. And so I'm interested to see how things shift. But I also love how I've been able to connect with people all around the world and realize we're the same in so many ways. Moms all want the same things for their kids. It doesn't matter if you're all the way around the world in Australia, or you're in the United States, or you're in Nigeria. We all want that same thing, and we want to be in touch with our motherly instinct for our kids and to follow it. And we want to build resilience in them. But how we do it in survival mode versus we're creating our own drama, for lack of a better way of putting it. Uh, it's all a choice. The choice is always available. Good and bad are always available to choose from. And when we recognize that, I think that's really the power, because then we can see the good and in the bad, or we can see how to overcome or how to turn something around. Whereas if we get too black and white and we don't see different perspectives, or we're not open, or we don't ask for help, that's where you can really get stuck.
Yes, I think you say it so well, and it really is being able to relate and have those candid, authentic conversations, and being confident enough in yourself to be like, I'm showing up as the authentic version of me, and this is what I'm struggling with, and I would love to hear what you're struggling with, and let's support each other. I think that perspective makes such a huge difference, especially in a world where it feels like it's very easy to try to climb up each other, to try to get to the top and try to be the best and try and get the most followers or the most things, the best job. Um, and in doing that, I think that you sell small pieces of your soul along the way, because we really are meant to do it together. And humanity has overcome many insurmountable, impossible things when we recognize our shared human experience and we start to work collectively.
And it seems like we're all fighting for like our agency, our right to choose. So we can choose that perspective, that our children can choose that perspective, that they can choose who they want to be. So in a way, it's all like freedom in a way. Like being an
Mhm.
overcomer is the freedom to figure it out, to get through it, but on your own terms, on the way that works for you, because no two people are the same in what they do. And what do you practice, or what strategies do you love to do with your clients, or in your home, or in your family, that really resonate with the conversation that we've had today, that another mom could apply or could try?
So what I love to do with my children, and I actually say this so often that my toddler will say it to other adults when when an adult tells him he can't do something. He will say, "I am little, I am learning. Sometimes when we learn, we make mistakes, but that's
Oh,
okay because that means that we're learning." And that's something that we repeat all the time with everything, whether we're building a block tower, whether we are um, going on a walk and we trip and we fall, or we're trying to learn to ride our bike. It's something that we repeat. We are little and we are learning, and that part of learning is making mistakes, and that's okay. And it's something that he'll say to his other little friends when he plays, and it's something that he'll say to his little brother. So I think that is a huge thing to recognize challenges, hard things that happen in our lives as opportunities to learn and grow. They're not meant to break you, they're meant to make you stronger. And if you face those challenges with the mindset that this is going to make me stronger, not I can't do this and I'm incapable, that perspective change shifts your whole experience. Um,
and I
and
love
then
you
the
starting
other,
that so young because it will really stick. What we
I
teach
hope
them when
so.
they're little will really go. I mean, I do an affirmation with my son, and his little thing is always keep
Oh,
trying, keep trying. So he'll catch me and he'll
oh,
say it back to me. And I love that. I
oh,
love that they kind of give that give back. There's the struggles and there's the
yes.
days, and then there's that moment they just love on you as mommy, and you're the best person in the world and their big hero. And you're like, okay, when you were sick and I was sleep deprived and that was hard, that just made it all worth it.
Yeah. It's true. My husband says to me, he's like, "Doesn't it drive you crazy when they just follow you around?" And I was like, "No, because they're only gonna follow me around like this for such a short time, and this is the only time in my life I'm ever going to have little groupies and my own little fan club, and I'm not gonna lie, it feels really good for a few years
I
until
love
they
that.
realize that mom's not as cool as they thought she was."
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I got a teenager,
yeah,
so yeah, it
yeah,
changes. So
it's co it's coming.
you're still
Uh
in there somewhere, but you're not exactly sure where you stand. I'll just put it that way. One day I think I've got it figured out, and the next minute I'm like, "Wait, what just happened?" So
Luckily, I feel like luckily, I feel like you've laid such a strong foundation. It'll come around and eventually she'll be
yeah,
like, "My mom's my best friend." Like, now
yeah.
we're best buds.
Well, and
Uh,
I'm just frank with her too that, I wanna have a relationship with you when you're an adult. I don't
yeah,
want to I value our relationship that much. And I know I'm not always getting it right, but I wanna put that effort into it because it is so different than when they're little and you have so much more influence over it. And when they start getting their own voice, their own opinion, honoring that as they get out of the toddler stage and they start learning to say no and they start to realize, "Oh, mom and dad aren't the only people. There's other opinions and voices out here." Or wait, that kid did that. I'm not allowed to do that. Why are they allowed to do that? Like, they're smart. They're really smart. And then they are kind of striving to get what they want, but they're also striving to figure out who they are. And
yes,
along that way of figuring it out, the best thing we can do is to let them fail and realize it's not fatal and to give them the opportunities to overcome things so they can build the confidence and the strength within themselves to know, I did that. If I did that, I can do this. And then when they get to
yes,
adulthood, they're more set for life than if they're sheltered and they don't aren't allowed to fail and they're coddled and all those things. And it's so funny because when I was first mom and you're first mom with your first one, you're so different. I was definitely a helicopter mom. I definitely wanted to protect. I definitely wanted to make their life just this blissful thing. And then divorce happens and that's not even an option anymore. Like
yeah,
real life has hit and you no longer can protect them completely from what happened or what can happen in life and how hard it hurts and how drastic the changes can be. But what you can do is show up with love. What you can do is show up with support. What you can do is make the effort to figure out what works for each kid and to be there and to show up. I mean, that's the thing about mom is you're that resilience for them until they get their own in a lot of ways, but you have to be the example of it. And then I've also come to realize all the hard things that my kids have gone through, and I think this generation in general is going through, and the drastic changes is really an opportunity for them to become the overcomers, to gain strength, to be a step ahead of where we are. It must be preparing them for wherever the world is going. That's their generation. It's not the same as my generation. It's not the same as the generation before. We're building towards something more for all of humanity. And mothers are the ones who are shaping the future. Mothers are the foundation of society. What we do really is the work that matters. We're shaping the individuals of the future. And that's why I feel like this subject matter is really important, because we have people who feel defeated. We have high suicide teen rates. We have high mental illness. And if we can fix that at home, I think we can really make a difference. The answer isn't really out there. The value isn't really out there, except for in resources. It's in here and in here right now. And at home is the safe space from all of that, from all the noise, from all those things. And that place for them to get quiet, as you mentioned in the beginning, and see the importance of being quiet with themselves and feeling their energy, their vibration, and where it goes into the world.
Yes, I love that. I think you said that so beautifully. And it does really, if you create a resilient generation, you change the world. That's
Yeah.
that the mothers, as a mom, if you want to change the world, if you have huge aspirations, funnel your passion and your resilience and the best of you into your children, because they will go out and do incredible things and you will be there helping them. And I think that's such a powerful perception of motherhood, especially in a world where a lot of the messaging is being a mom isn't a really big job. It's like it's you don't really work, you're not contributing much. Oh, your value, you don't have a lot of
Mhm.
value. And really, mothers, we shape the future.
Mhm.
And so, if a mother doesn't do her job well, society suffers as a whole.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what this podcast is all about. I want mothers to feel empowered and realize how important they are, and that motherhood is sacred. And whatever your motherhood looks like, it's yours. It's you get to choose what you're going to do with it and how you're going to show up and how you're going to be there for the kids that are a part of your life. And they're yours for a reason. God gave them to you for a reason. So you can handle it. Know you can handle it. And if you're listening to this and you even just care, that shows a lot, because you're making the effort. And every path is going to be unique. Just like your friends questioning you, you instinctively knew you were going to make it work. You instinctively knew you were going to figure it out. It didn't have to be their version of how it would work out, or it didn't have to be their version of overwhelm. It's yours. It's your life.
Yeah.
It's your kids. It's your family. So maybe you're hearing something, you're like, oh, that doesn't quite work for my family. That's good. You know that. Do what works for your family. Find your little affirmations. Find your little things that you do. It's your unique flavor that your children need. Explore that. Get curious with it. Enjoy it. Listen to other podcast episodes. Get ideas. That's what this is here for. This is a variety. This is very inclusive, with the idea that this can serve all mothers. And in that process, we're empowering each other. We're enriching each other, and therefore helping that next generation, so that these kind of conversations can happen more for them regularly, and not just in podcasts and not just in some rooms. That these are the things that we get together like they used to with quilting circles, and get together and talk about what was going on with their kids, and get advice from the wise ones, and get advice from the friends who's raised the teenager, and get advice from the friend who has that child with that special need. We are out here. We just need to connect with each other more and share our voices and share our stories, so that we can have that common humanity as a motherhood, to realize that there's a much larger motherhood out there than you may realize. And you've got your tribe in there, and you've got the people that are going through the same things you are and want the same things that you do.
Yes, and I think it's so empowering to realize you're not alone. And on the days where you feel like I can't do this, because there are days where
Hmm.
you feel like I cannot do this, it's incredible to have those people who are behind you going, "Look at what you did back there. Girl, you got this.
Yeah,
You got this. I know you got this even if you don't know it today, and I'm going to remind you today because tomorrow you'll remember too."
exactly. And that's how we should have it with our kids every day. You got this.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. Any last thoughts?
Just thank you so much for having me. If you're interested, if any of your listeners are interested in learning a little bit more about burnout, I would love to share my book with you, Mommy Needs a Minute. You can find it on Amazon. It's a Audible version, ebook version, and a paperback version. And in it, we talk about maternal instinct and body burnout and career burnout and identity burnout, and how to just rediscover yourself in this new role, so that you can show up for yourself and your kids authentically, and start to make choices to really build that life and that resilient spirit that we all have within us.
Wonderful. I need to go get your book. I want to read it now.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Well, thank you guys for being here. If you saw half the behind the scenes of this episode in particular, you would know we are resilient overcomers here. We practice what we preach. So know that you can do it too. I believe in you, believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you next time on the Resilient Mother podcast.